Number 1. Country Walk. I was a very moody teenager. I guess all teenagers are moody to a point, but I was the type of kid who really didn't like being around people at all. It probably didn't help that my family had once lived in the city, but then we moved out to the country. We lived in a rural route that was far away from the other houses. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but it was difficult, not only making new friends during your teenage years, but also doing it when you lived in an area that everyone lived so far away from each other. I ended up not making many friends at school, because I figured I would not be able to see them over the summertime. I was used to hanging out with my friends during the summer vacation, and no one I knew was anywhere close to me. I spent a large amount of my time alone. My family and I didn't have a lot in common. Plus, I know my family had been getting a bit irritated with me and my moodiness, so I would tend to spend most of my time in my bedroom, and occasionally go for long walks out in the country. And this happened on a really hot summer night. We didn't have an air conditioner, and that often made it much worse in the house than it was outside. So when I came to the conclusion that I would not be getting any sleep, I decided to get up and go for a late night walk. Our house was on top of a hill. I walked out to the gravel road and had two choices. I rarely walked along the road. When I went out, I would tend to go out in the forest and hills. But I was not going to do that in the dark. And it was darker than most people who have never lived far away from the city might even know was possible. The moon wasn't large that night and didn't help much either. I chose to walk away from the main roads and further into the hills. I didn't do this often, really. The road went down the hill, and then up another one. For the most part, the road was very straight, though. It didn't fork, is what I mean. There was occasionally a dark road that would have led out from the gravel road, but I figured they were all driveways, since they all had mailboxes in front of them. I didn't go down any of these, though. It was hot and I was very sweaty. I really wasn't paying much attention to what was going on around me. I was deep in depressing teenager thought. I'm sure you know what I mean. I was lost in my own world, my own thoughts, that likely I don't even remember nowadays. A noise brought me out of this. I heard a rustling in the forest. I want you to really do your best and try to picture this. It was very, very dark. The gravel road was really only wide enough for one car. No matter where I walked, I was close to the side of the road, and if something had been out in the woods, it could get very, very close to me without me really noticing it. I didn't notice that it was anything at first. I kept looking out into the trees. I really couldn't see anything, and I couldn't hear any more noises. I brushed it off as a small animal, or the wind, and just kept on my way. I kept walking. Something really odd happened. I saw a little bit of light up in the distance. I didn't know what it was, so I walked even slower. As I got closer, though, I heard a rustling in the trees again. It was on the same side I had heard it before, and I checked it out. Still, I didn't see anything. I got closer and realized that there was a house off into the distance. I was taken aback a bit, but realized that I must have walked down a driveway without realizing it. I took a few steps more forward. It stopped when I noticed someone standing up in the distance from me, and that made me stop. I decided it would probably be best to just turn around and walk back, but as I turned, I finally saw what had been making that rustling noise. A man, holding what looked like an axe, was crouched down behind a tree. I think the two of us stared at each other for a few seconds, but it seemed like much longer. I heard a noise, and looking back towards the house, I saw the man standing by the house begin walking in my direction. I just turned and ran back the way I came. Now, I know most people will tell you a story like this and claim they never looked back. I, however, needed to look back to see if the guys were following me at all, and I nearly tripped when I saw they were. I was confident that they were going to catch and kill me, and I kept running, though, until I got back to the main gravel road. When I did, I turned and ran back toward home. I only looked back one more time, and that was because I did see the men one last time. They were standing by the driveway and had stopped following me, but they kept watching me as I left. I talked to my brother about it, and he told me I had stumbled along some drug dealers who were making bath salts. He told me they were well known in the area. He also told me they were probably just trying to scare me so I wouldn't come back. Good job. It worked. Number 2. This happened to me back in the mid-90s when I was a teenager. I had just gotten my driver's license and had my own car. I felt so grown up, but driving gave me anxiety, so I didn't drive as much as most people my age. Mainly to and from school, until I started to feel more comfortable. A few weeks into my junior year, there was a school dance. I lived in an extremely small town in Washington State, and there really wasn't much to do. We didn't have iPhones and social media back then, so most teenagers looked forward to school dances. I wasn't really that social, but decided to go anyways, even if it was just for an hour or two. I put on a cute outfit and did my hair and makeup, and gave my mom a hug and told her I would be home by a little after 10. The school was less than a mile from my home, and when I got there I discovered that the parking lot next to the building where the dance was being held was full. I turned around and went over to the main parking lot, which is where I parked on school days. This was at the end of September, and it was around 8 p.m., so it was dark outside. There really weren't any other cars parked in that lot, and I started to feel a little uncomfortable. It was only about a 2-minute walk to the building where they were holding the dance, but I still felt creeped out. I'm a female, and was only 5'2" and around 110 pounds at the time, so I would have been an easy target for any weirdos on the loose. I put my car keys in my pocket, looked around and started heading over to the main building. I walked down the sidewalk and past the different buildings that I attended classes in on school days. As I was walking, I looked ahead and saw about 4 teenagers standing around and laughing and talking. At first I felt relieved because I was pretty sure I knew them. There were only about 200 students in my high school, and they had pretty strict policies about bringing outside guests to the dances. I thought it looked like one of the girls in my class, her brother, and a couple other students. And they noticed me approaching and yelled something out, and at first I couldn't tell what they had said. As I got closer I could see they were smoking something, and I'm not sure if it was a tobacco, cigarette, or marijuana. One of them asked me if I wanted to smoke, and it was then that I realized I didn't know these people, and that they did not go to my school. Anyone who knew me knew never to ask me to smoke, and because my dad had passed away from lung cancer 2 years prior. I'm not trying to sound rude, but these people looked like gang members, and not the kind of people I wanted to hang out with. I started to feel really afraid. I walked across and started walking on the other sidewalk to avoid them, and that seemed to anger them. When they started saying, "What's your problem, bitch? Are you too stuck up to come party with us?" I started to walk even faster, and looked around to see if anyone I knew was outside. And they kept yelling at me, calling me names and insulting me, and it took everything I had not to turn around and scream at them to fuck off. As I got to the door where the dance was being held, I opened the door and practically ran inside. I bumped into my English teacher, who was also the mom of one of my close friends. She asked me if everything was okay, and I almost said yes. But then I realized I would have to go back that same way to go home, and decided to be honest. I told her there were some weird guys outside smoking something, and they were yelling at me on my way over. I was pretty sure they didn't go to school here, and had no business being here. She listened to me, and then went and spoke with her husband, who was also a chaperone and a teacher at the school. A few minutes later, he headed outside with the principal, and they were gone about 10 minutes. I was trying to distract myself by talking to my friends and enjoying myself, but I was still really afraid. When the dance ended, I asked my teacher if those guys outside were gone, and she told me that they had been asked to leave. That made me feel better, but I was still afraid. I wanted to ask someone to walk me to my car, but I don't like asking for favors, so I headed off by myself. I stepped outside and took my keys out of my pocket for 2 reasons. 1, so I could open my car door as quickly as possible, and 2, I figured I could use them as a weapon if necessary. I walked outside and looked around and didn't see anyone. I walked slowly at first and kept looking around. My heart was pounding and I wished I was at home, safe in my bed, instead of feeling like I was going to have a heart attack from fear. I was getting closer to my car and heard voices. They said something like, "That must be the bitch's car." I looked around and didn't see anyone, but I took off running and hauled ass to my car. I unlocked the door, got in, and immediately locked the door. I started my car, turned on my headlights, and kept looking around, because the last thing I needed was to run someone over. I never did see anyone, but I know I still heard them talking as I was running to my car. I pulled out of the school parking lot like a bat out of hell. Just a few yards from the school is a Minute Mart and a gas station. I pulled in there, just so I can gather my thoughts before going home. My mom would definitely know something was wrong. When I got home, I told my mom I had fun and was tired, and just went to bed. I didn't want to tell her what had happened, because I didn't want to lose my freedom of driving by myself. The next Monday at school, I was talking to my friends during lunch, and casually asked them if they had seen any weirdos outside during the dance on Saturday night. They all said no, except one. I described them to her and she said they were most likely gang members from a neighboring town. A chill went up my spine, and I felt lucky that I had escaped that encounter without any serious harm being done to me. And so that's my story. It's not the most exciting, but it happened to me over 20 years ago, and it still scares me every time I think about it. Number 3. This took place senior year of high school. It was around Halloween, so our film teacher, who made us do a new project for every holiday, asked us to do something horror-related. A few groups did true crime cases, others did something paranormal-related. My group decided on a found footage film. The group consisted of me and my friends Carolyn, Austin, Daniela, and Kay. We decided on this really old abandoned place. It used to be a psych ward hospital, but after a lot of backlash from immoral practices and stuff of that nature, they shut it down in the early 90s. Ever since then, it's been completely forgotten about. My friends and I decided this would be the perfect place to film, since it's not as well known as other older places in the area, and it was within walking distances of our houses. The next day we all went there together, just so we could get a feel for the area and see if there were any cool props we could use. We hopped over a fence that wasn't any higher than our waists. It did say keep out, but there weren't any cameras around, so we went past anyway. As soon as we got into the building, there was a thick odor. It smelled very musty and almost salty. And there was technically 4 floors. The second and third had rooms. The first had a small cafeteria and a few rooms with gurneys. And the basement was a morgue, though it was very small. Well, we decided to explore the top levels in groups, and when we were done, we would meet up and look at the morgue together. Daniela and Caroline were best friends since childhood, and Kay and Austin were dating, so I decided I would explore the ground floor alone. My logic was, since I was alone, if something went wrong, I could just run out the front door. Daniela and Caroline took the 3rd floor, and Kay and Austin took the 2nd floor. We all agreed to return to the front of the ground floor within the next half hour. Let me just say that urban exploring is nowhere near as fun when you're alone. It was dead silent. I didn't even feel scared or anything. About 40 minutes passed, and we were finally back together. Daniela asked us if we heard any loud noises coming from the top floor. Daniela does tend to make morbid and dark jokes, so I assumed she was trying to freak us out. Carolyn chimed in and said it sounded like glass breaking. She pulled out her small 2008 camera, which we were planning to use for the film. Apparently she was recording a bit, so She could see how it looks and check the audio. She grabbed Austin's laptop and plugged in the SD card. She skipped about 5 minutes before the end of the recording. In the video, there was a loud sound of glass shattering coming from the opposite side of the ward. You could hear Daniela laugh and Carolyn say something like, "Holy shit, let's get back downstairs," from behind the camera. Kay's face went white. She started freaking out, saying, "We have to go now. Please, we can't be here anymore." We started running past the gate and all the way to the gas station across from Austin's house. When we got over to his house, we were all confused. We all looked straight at Kay in an almost comedic way. That was a window breaking. Kay was always the most paranoid and easily scared of the group, so we all kind of groaned since we liked that location, and we wouldn't be able to film there now since Kay. Now that I'm older, I see what she meant. Somebody, or something, broke that window. And they might have been trying to warn Daniela and Caroline to stay away. If they went as far as shattering a window, who knows what else they were prepared to do. They might have even seen us come in. We ended up doing our project on a break-in murder, which was actually pretty fun to make. Either way, I'm happy that none of us were harmed. My only advice is to trust your friends when you're in a bad situation like ours. It could save your life. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I want to thank the people who have contributed to my GoFundMe. For people who don't follow me on Twitter or read my comments down in the comments section, I was robbed of my entire rent money about 2 weeks ago. It was pretty stupid of me to carry it around like that, but because of the way things have been lately, I didn't really feel safe leaving it at home. Anyone who's contributed so far by donating or just sharing it on social media, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. We also have a poll to name Cujo's kitten. The link is in the description. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please use the subscribe button and the bell below, or wait for the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment and share this video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you want narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address in the description. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.